This is autumn 2020, and the second wave of the COVID pandemic is hitting the world pretty hard. For us working in insights, data, and analytics, especially in Europe, the question of data privacy was always forefront. But the pandemic and the tracking devices that were installed in many countries have actually brought this very notion of data privacy to the front. And for those of us working in healthcare, actually, this is having another impact. Due to the question of data privacy being put forefront, a lot of legitimate questions about what is happening with my health data is actually turning patients to adopt digital health solution. My name is Julien Pahu. I'm working for EliLilly, a large American pharmaceutical company, and I'm going to share with you our digital transformation journey to try to actually answer this new conundrum about privacy and the health data privacy for our patient. I'm going to share this journey on how we tried to scout emerging technologies to find creative and win-win ways to address this question, and also how, as part of our digital transformation journey, we were partnering with the startups to co-create new solutions and hopefully a new future. First thing first, I think I need to put some context, as not everyone is familiar with healthcare and some of the very specific questions that we are faced with. So in healthcare, the question of the data we are working with is very specific. I know that privacy is very important everywhere, and it's a promise that we make to our customers all over the globe. But in terms of health data, we have a dilemma, and especially for our patients, because there is a long-term gain. If you imagine that all the data, all the health data for all the patients in the world were gathered together, it would enable AI therapies. We could control pandemics in a much better way. And we've seen some geographies have been managing to pool the data together and to have great control. Having lifelong medical records would also ensure that we could have treatment patterns and the visibility over the life of a patient to optimize therapies. But in the current setting, the short-term individual protection is outweighing this long-term societal gain, because, as mentioned before, there is a lot of technological distrust and legitimate ones. We see a lot of scandals about data leakages, about the social media sharing or selling your private data, etc. So, who to trust? What technology is to be trusted? But also, if I'm a patient, what is happening with my data? What is my data going to be sent to a third party to do some profiling about me? Or, as we've seen, the countries I was mentioning that were managing COVID outbreaks thanks to data and digital health tracking pretty well, they did it at some countries, and some people would argue, data privacy invasive manners. So how to balance these two elements is a very important one. And for the time being, we are more in a situation where, as mentioned in the intro, people will be more likely to be cautious about the digital health technologies, will be cautious about sharing their data, and want to protect their short-term individual stake rather than go for an elusive and still very abstract long-term gain. So this is the setup and the concern we need to balance in healthcare. Now I will jump to some technologies. So some emerging, or perhaps now not so emerging, technologies that could potentially help to rebalance, to address this concern. And the technology I'm going to share, and definitely a 20-minute presentation doesn't mean to be blockchain 101, but I will be talking about blockchain technology. You might have heard about it either because it's very much a buzzword word that's in the zeitgeist. You might have heard about it also as it is the technology behind Bitcoin. But beyond the hype, beyond Bitcoin and the financial use cases, this technology has a lot of potential. And to make it very simple, I like a lot this infographic that I'm sharing here. The main concept about blockchain is that instead of the traditional way we use and we manage data, which is creating databases that are a central tool. Basically, we pull data, we aggregate it in one places, and we steward it. And also that's the one place where we try to protect it from hacks, from leaks, etc. Blockchain is a very different approach. Instead of a box, I like this kind of tape that is being shown here. Basically, a blockchain is a sequence of elements, is a sequence of records. Some call it a distributed ledger. So this is actually synchronizing the data block after block and linking them thanks to encryption. So this is why you might hear about crypto technology. You might hear about Bitcoin being a cryptocurrency. So basically, this information, instead of being put in one place, in one box, it's being woven into one network of information that's independent, which means that this network of data being distributed, being ultimately staying at the end user's level, there is no risk of hacking. It's very difficult, almost impossible to hack. And it gives ultimate complete control on the individual on what information am I willing to share, to whom, etc. I will not spend too much time, but there are much smarter people than me that are actually seeing the promise about blockchain. Jack Ma, the CEO of Alibaba, is really seeing that it could be a game-changing technology. And actually, Don Tapscott, who was an expert that already back in the 90s in the early 90s, wrote some visionary books about how the internet was going at that time to be the next revolution. He's seeing the same disruptive and transformational potential for blockchain technology for the future, for the 2020s. So a lot of promise. Concretely, how this technology can help us address the issues that we have in healthcare about health data. I see it on several levels. So the first one, as I mentioned, this is technology as it doesn't have one central point of failure. It's not a box where all the data is stored. It's a network of encrypted data. So individuals control. So again, a lot of the lack of trust that individual can have about relinquishing access to their data is simply due that if I relinquish control, I don't know what's happening with my data. So here they can choose. As mentioned, hacking leaks virtually impossible. I know nothing is truly impossible, but in that context, the amount of effort for a hacker to hack a blockchain is so big, is so huge, that basically it's not worth the game. It's not worth the time investment. So that's one important element why we are believing that this technology could be solving this dilemma. Then second point, and I think most of you will relate to that, it's in question of data quality and consistency. What do we have to do with traditional blockchains? When we pull data from many sources, we aggregate, we consolidate. Well, first of all, it's very time intensive. And data quality, unless you have all of your data in one ecosystem and you generate all of your data, well, data quality is variable at best. So here again, as it is not a box, you put things in a box, you shake it a little bit, everything is mixed up. Here, this is a tape. So every element is logged in sequence. Again, I will not get too technical, but thanks to encryption, every bit, every block in the chain is linked to the previous one. So it's very easy and very fast to be able to reconcile data, to get this visibility. So also a very interesting promise. Here, not that much for the patient, but for us in the industry on how to work with the data. So what are the areas of opportunity for us in healthcare? Where do we see that we could use this technology? Obviously, clinical trial is something that's very important for us. It's very important that we have very robust data, very bulletproof. We need to be able to submit to regulatory, to submit very high quality dossier based on strong data. But also now, and we see it with the pandemic, not only we need to provide data, but we need to be able to provide it fast. So that is definitely a huge area of of hope. Of course, regulatory compliance, how to ensure that the data and the product was used in the right way at the right moment, being able to act. Supply chain, that would allow you to track the product from the moment it leaves your warehouse to the moment it's being sold or even administered to the patient. So also bypassing any type of counterfeiting. And last but not least, and this is actually already done in some countries, but for, as I was mentioning, medical and health records. For today, for your health records, you have your physician, usually your GP, that has some data about you. You need to go to a specialist. The specialist either will take your data from scratch, might get some information from your GP, but your GP will not send your whole dossier. It's impossible. So he will be filtering. And ultimately, the information about your health is fragmented at best. Again, having blockchain-enabled medical record would allow seamlessly to jump to one practitioner to another and to be able to have this long-term view, immutable view about your health, getting a lot of gains for you as a patient, evidently. Some countries are already doing it, like Estonia. So this is the part where actually we are going to be interested and we were going to do our experiment. So again, we have a business problem. We have a societal problem I mentioned at the beginning, which is what to do with health data and these concerns that our patients, our stakeholders, and society is having about entrusting us with health data. And we need it to be able to provide better services and to provide better answers to our patients. We have a potential solution, blockchain, but this is unproven in that area. So how did we go in order to try and to test that? So first of all, and I will spend a couple of minutes on that slide, we need to have a framework to make it happen. And that's what I call a digital transformation framework, because we are a pharma company. Our work is to discover molecules and to be able to make them accessible to patients. We are not a digital company. And I think, again, most of the people in this summit are not working in digital companies. So very often, at least that's what I've seen in our industry, in some others, when we talk about digital transformation, how to go for innovation and try out new technologies, well, we go and we look either at digital giants, so you know the big companies that are dominating the tech field, and then you look at the Googles, the Amazons of this world. There are companies actually that have basically data and digitalization is their business. It's their business model, and all the data that they have, they can leverage it because they generate the ecosystem in which the data is playing, so they can tap on that. So if we try to mimic and to replicate that, we are not geared like that, so we will fail. Otherwise, sometimes what we do when we look at digital transformation innovation is like, oh, we need to be more like a startup. And what are we going to do? We are going to do a startup tour, either sending executives to Silicon Valley or whatever startup region in your country. You go, you visit, very impressive, very interesting time. It's usually a good team building for everyone who goes there. But ultimately, what's the main outcome? You might have bean bags in your open lounge. You will have a foosball table in your kitchen. But that doesn't make us a startup. We are not geared. We are two big companies. We are not lean enough to be able to work like a startup, and our processes prevent us to work like that. So this is why I went and I tried, and I like a lot this framework here, which is called the Digital Matrix, which was developed by the Boston University. And this framework is a very interesting one because it's a framework made for a company, a traditional company that needs to transform and to play the digital world, but a traditional company that is not either a tech giant or a startup. And here the main assumption is like, well, we need, to change our DNA, but you cannot go with a big revolution immediately, otherwise it will fail. So here, this framework is very interesting, saying like you need first to find smaller projects, calling experimentation at the edge, you will need to find the right place, the right business problem, the right technology. So you can do, tiny experiments, be able to test if it's working before, little by little, you scale it up. And you don't scale it up enterprise level, but you scale it up. That's the second level, collision at the core. Once your project has proven successful, was a success story, then you are able to put it living in parallel of the normal business. And it will learn from the traditional business, but it will also change a bit, create some clashes, of course, collision, definitely. It will clash with your traditional business processes, but that it will be solid enough so it will not be nipped in the bud. And only once the two have collided, have morphed, this is the moment where you can really go full scale and enterprise-wide. So that's the framework we've been applying. We've been really looking at every type of business question, every type of digital transformation initiative under the lens of finding the right business problem. In order for the experiment to work, we need to know, okay, we need to be doing it because we are answering a business need. We are not going to do, let's try the new fancy technology, the latest buzzword. We need to know our business partner. We need to have someone that will entrust us. We need to find a geography where the project is likely to succeed. So that's really important to have this portfolio of small projects that you are able, when discussing with your business stakeholders internally, find, okay, here we might have something that we could try out here. It will bring value and we will learn something out of it. That's the right business problem. The right framework, I just talked about it. This is really something we found very successful, not to try to reinvent everything to create a big revolution, but go for those steps of digital transformation. And finally, very important and very much in the topic for today is we need to find the right partners. As I said before, as a large traditional company, we are not a startup, but we can work with startups and create a mutual beneficial elements. That's really the co-creation step. Because what I found out, and hopefully the example I'm going to show you will illustrate, is that we need a startup, we need the flexibility of startup to be able to quickly implement in an agile way the experiment at the edge, but also startups, especially on topics that are very, very emerging, very, very new. They don't know the business questions. They actually don't know if their business model is sustainable. And usually they have the good old egg and chicken situation that many people, many companies are very interested in working with them, but then they will ask them, okay, show me a list of 5 customers with which you were already successful and you have already rolled out that. If this is something that's very emerging and radical, they have no one. And if everyone is waiting, the project will never happen. So this is why it's really important to work with them on helping, and potentially it will allow them or push them to spin or to pivot their solution. But you might help them actually to be more aligned with true business need and actually help them shape a solution that they will be able to pitch to other customers in the long term. And again, that's the main point about shaping the environment. So that's a really important element, having this right partnership, working, identifying startups that are willing to collaborate with you, that are willing to learn, and that are willing basically to create this mutually beneficial system. So that's a very nice theory. We have a business problem. We have a potential tech that can answer it. We have this framework. How does it work in real life? So I'm going to go quickly through a use case. So before I jump into it, before I explain to you what was our blockchain journey, a couple of disclaimers. As you can imagine, we are not allowed to give company names, product, or therapeutic area. So I will have to stay at a certain high level to present that, but everything I'm going to show you is an actual blockchain experiment at the edge project that we run in our company, and that took place between 18 and 19. So let's start with the first thing, finding the right business problem. As I mentioned, I was theorizing on blockchain for already a couple of years before, but as long as I didn't have the right project, the right problem, it was just the theories and ideas. So really what was important was to partner, to listen to the business in order to understand, okay, do you have a therapeutic area that's especially sensitive, to data privacy? Again, I'm talking about a couple of years ago. That was before COVID and before the point I mentioned in the intro came really in the spotlight and now are almost evident to everyone. At that time, it was not that much of an accepted concept. So we were really finding a therapeutic area where we are, okay, here patients are really not willing to risk having their private data leaked, etc. So that might be, a hurdle for them to share data. That was the first point. And then brainstorming with my business partners in the project, we worked on the flow on how could we address this question. But again, we wanted to make a success. You remember the experimentation at the edge framework. We really want to make it small, but we want to learn a lot from it and we want to make it successful. So in order to add another layer, not only we found the right therapeutic area, the right brand, products, etc. We went also to ensure that we are going to go run this project in a geography that has high sensitivity to privacy. So really, double the dose to be sure that we are going to do at the right place to really get true insights. So here in that case, we took GDPR as a proxy. We went to the country where we got the most GDPR questions, and we use it as a proxy to assume, okay, if we get a lot of questions about GDPR in this country, that means that this is a country that has culturally a good sensitivity to data privacy. So that was finding the right business problem, the very first step. Once we had the right business problem, as I mentioned, finding the right partnership. So here, as mentioned, we are already scouting a portfolio of startups. We are working on some ideas, trying to find with them a couple of solutions that we go. And on this one, as we were identifying the project, we were working with a startup that was basically building a health data marketplace based on the blockchain. So here, and that's perhaps an important point to explain the difference, especially for this meeting where I presume a lot of market research practitioners are in the room. Here, the difference is that usually if you go to a panel or you run a traditional market research, what do you have? You have a third party that on your behalf will be asking questions to their panel, aggregate the data, structure it, and give you the insights. Here, what we try to do and what the startup is trying to build is actually they build a marketplace. So they are not the ones, they don't have a panel per se. They are not the ones going to ask the question directly to the individuals. But what they are going to do is they have a lot of people using their app, and on their app, they are basically logging health data. What's going to happen is that the data is encrypted on their device and they get a token. Again, this is a technical blockchain concept that I will not elaborate for the sake of time, but basically this token is a reward for generating data. At that stage, they had quite a significant amount of people using the app and generating data and getting the token. But again, you can have a market where you have a lot of people that go to sell. If you have no one buying, well, the marketplace will not go very far and the token will not go very far. So here, really what we wanted to do is say, well, we are actually going to go there, and us, without a third party, we are going to play in that market. So again, the main thing is that the data is decentralized. The data is not aggregated anywhere. The data is staying with the individual and is controlled by the user only. So what's happening next? So as I was saying about the people are generating data. So they are there, they are answering on a daily basis some information about their general health, etc. What's happening at that stage is that We purchased some tokens, so basically some currency to be able to play in that market. And then another blockchain concept happens, which is called smart contract. So when some people in the marketplace were answering yes to a specific trigger question, so again, don't forget, it's anonymized, the data is encrypted, so we don't know who is clicking what. But if you are using this app and you selected something, you selected yes to a specific question about a specific disease area that we are interested with, then at that moment, they would get an automated request, again, peer-to-peer. So it's us automatically, so we don't know who, but we know that we are sending an offer, a contract to an individual to exchange data and for the individual basically to answer more questions about us. And when they answer more questions, they get rewarded for that. So again, very different than the traditional way where we would be paying the third party, would paying the panel, we would be paying the market research agency for the data they are generating. Here, actually, we are going directly peer-to-peer to the individual. If the individual is not interested, basically when they receive the smart contract, well, we don't even know they received it. We don't know they said no. Nothing is happening. They didn't exist. That's why privacy completely maintained. If they say yes, again, they will generate the data only for that. They would get tokens. So basically, they would get rewarded for what they create. And for us, we get the encrypted and anonymized health data, which is something that's very important for us. What's the benefit of this approach? The benefit is on many levels. As we were saying before, and I was mentioning in the intro, for individual, I think it's all about individuals and the patient. They control their data. They are not generating any data that's going to a third-party database that's going to be processed or that's going to be sold by someone else on their behalf. They are controlling it from the beginning. What's happening to them, and another benefit as well, is potentially, depending on the data they logged, they might actually have, an underlying condition that they were not aware. Of course, this app will not be doing a diagnosis. It's all enabled by smart contract, so it's automated, so it's not us pushing, we don't know who they are. But depending on what they answer, they might simply get an automated recommendation to seek further professional advice. So that might be a win for the patient. And finally, as I said, they control their data, they get more insights about their condition, but potentially also they get rewarded directly. It's not the traditional way when you answer data and you get a very elusive reward or incentive, but the incentive is diluted with the rest. No, they are directly rewarded for the data they create and they fully control it. For the startup, that's very important for them because, as I was mentioning, very often they have a service, they have a business idea, but that might not be in line with what so potential customers would be paying for, etc. So we could allow them and help them to pivot their initial solution to something that's actually of value. So really, they aligned their value proposition to a true business need. So this is a huge win for them that will basically get them one step on getting other customers. But also, and that's the part that's very interesting and different from traditional panels, etc. As I said, they don't get the reward that's given to the individual. This is paid directly peer-to-peer. But as the individual get token, it's market economy. So in market economy, the more you have people playing and spending cash in the market, the more the currency will have value. And as they are the one that own the marketplace, actually, the value of the marketplace is increasing. The token that they generate is increasing in value. So this is how they basically get value and they increase their profitability. So that's also very important and a very different business model. So here we have some shared basically value. Finally, for us as a company, what was very interesting is, first of all, we received fast, high quality data. So on this one thing also that I cannot show you the actual data, but that was very impressive, is that instead of having to wait several weeks to months for the data to be consolidated, to be put in a report and getting it, we receive the data live. So really, due to the way the data is based and the blockchain is structured, we receive live data, which I had never seen in my career. So that's very impressive. And on top of it, we receive high quality data. We have been able to run a couple of quality checks with external sources, and the data quality was very high. So that was also something that was very, very important. And also, ultimately, this is improving because we want to ensure that basically people are aware of a very specific type of disease where people might be tough to reach and to contact. We have created disease awareness. So that's also something that was very interesting and important for us. And then, so that's where we were when we ran this pilot. What we do, and again, let's think about the experimentation at the edge framework. Now we are learning from phase one. We will co-create phase two with the startup. And this is going to have mutual benefits, because on one hand, for us internally, we have a success story. What happened is we had many other functions, other business units, other therapeutic areas knocking at the door to replicate that. As we were doing that, you can imagine that the questions we had to get it approved by compliance, legal, procurement, those are different questions, things that we are not used to do. So we actually even helped our own digital transformation journey by having to tackle questions we were not used to. And then for the startup, of course, for them, they are able to buffer their service offering. They're able to share it and showcase it to other companies. And we basically are creating a great shared group. So that's what we call a distributed win-win-win. In conclusion, basically, that's my parting words on this approach, on the experimented at the edge, and how it was important to have great partnership internally with business partners and externally with the startup. We need to find really the right case. It's really important to spend a lot of time identifying where this experiment can be a success. Because if it is a success, I have seen that on that case and on some others in the company will want to replicate. And the usual doubts, or I would say cold feet about adopting an emerging technology, if you show it works, there will be a lot of pull to happen. So that's why I say it needs to be incremental. We need to start with humble goals. We need to edge our chance to make it happen, but we need to have a long-term vision. That's also something I've found, that if you just show that we want to do that, and that will be the first step, we need to anchor it in a long-term transformation vision. We need, as I was showing hopefully at the beginning, the long-term goal is basically to change the way that we process patient data, so we provide better value to our patients. So that's also something that's very important. And really, what's important is really we use that to test some hypothesis, and we see if it works or not, and then we are able to move on in our journey. So that's really something that was important. We had that in the back of the mind. We were saying, okay, blockchain might be the solution to address this need that patients were showing due to the same circumstances about data privacy, etc. Let's use that to test it. And actually, again, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to show the exact numbers, but as parting words, I will just mention that with the business partner who sponsored the project, we had an internal goal saying, for phase one, if we have 5 patients sharing data with us on the blockchain, we are happy and the project is a huge success. What actually happened is, after a couple of weeks, the project being live, we got a call from the startup telling us that we had reached the cap of 1,000. So we reached and mobilized 1,000 people in one geography in a couple of weeks, thanks to that. That was unseen, and that was something that was really, really powerful. And the data was showing that at least one tick box is made. We will need to run now some more robust experiments to test it in other geographies, but that's again the approach. We have done the experiment. Now we needed to bring it to the next level so it can, collide with the other business units in order to continue our journey to digital transformation. I hope this was an interesting session, and I'm now really available for any questions in the chat or in the Q&A. Thank you very much to everyone.